You know, a Santa hat really seems like the kind of thing I'd have lying around the house somewhere, but I wasn't able to find one, so I guess this guy will have to do. Okay. I'm not really sure how well known the movie Nativity is outside of the UK, but here at least it's kind of worked its way into the lexicon of modern Christmas movies, and I don't really know why, because it's not good. So the movie begins with a really heavy-handed explanation of the main characters and their backstory and motivations. You've got Paul Madden's, played by Martin Freeman, his girlfriend Jennifer, and their good friend Gordon. So they're all good friends performing in some kind of Christmassy based show. And as they're standing off the side of the stage, they kind of take turns to describe or say out loud their motivations. So Jennifer, she's not really happy being an actor. She says, I don't like this. She's Scottish, by the way. There's no control in being an actor. I want to be the one in charge. I want to be a director or a producer or something. So then Paul says that he's going to be a teacher. And the others kind of look down on him for that, which is a little weird. So we get a bit more story moving forward with narration. Paul becomes a teacher. Jennifer leaves to go to LA to pursue her dreams. And then Gordon also becomes a teacher, but at the really posh and prestigious school. And it's also noted that his school nativity plays always get brilliant reviews in the local paper, which is not a thing I realised local papers did. But anyway, Paul Madden, he does a nativity play and it gets -2 stars. It's a scathing review. It's described as abysmal, which is kind of cruel if you remember that this is children we're talking about. So then Paul in narration says, that's when I decided I hate Christmas. And then it jumps forward another 5 years. So then the plot begins for real. It's Christmas time. Paul is going about his usual stuff, being kind of grumpy. Martin Freeman is doing that face that he does, the one's like you get to see what he's like as a teacher. He's not the best. The kids are kind of unruly. He can't really control them. That's contrasted with Gordon Shakespeare, and of course his kids are all really well behaved, and he has them literally chanting that they're going to win a 5-star review for their nativity play. So Paul gets put in charge of doing the nativity play at his school. Of course, he doesn't want to do it after the disaster of previous years, but he doesn't really have much of a choice. And this scene, he also gets told he has a new teaching assistant starting today called Mr. Poppy. It was around this point in the movie where I started noticing just how frantic the editing is, because there's a lot that happens in a very short space of time, and there is very little room to breathe in between. Most scenes last an average around 30 seconds to a minute. Like the next scene where Mr. Poppy is first introduced, you've got Paul walking into his classroom. He sees Mr. Poppy playing around with these kids, and he says, who are you? So Mr. Poppy stands up and says, oh, I'm your new teaching assistant, Mr. Poppy. End of scene. So, about Mr. Poppy. I think I get what they were trying to do with this character, having him as like a counterpoint to Paul, because Paul is like grumpy and hates Christmas. Mr. Poppy is more childlike and fun-loving, and all the kids like him, and he's supposed to be, a little stupid, and, he's a fun, bumbling guy, and he's like, a comedic character. But the stuff he does and the way he acts in this movie, he comes across more like someone who literally has the mind of a child. And I don't think that's what they were going for. So Paul very quickly realizes that Mr. Poppy is not qualified to be working with children and really shouldn't be in this position at all. He straight away goes to see the headmistress of the school and complain, and he finds out that Mr. Poppy is in fact her nephew. So guess you're stuck with him then. So Paul and Mr. Poppy go out to buy a Christmas tree for the school, And while they're there, they run into Gordon, of course. And so Gordon and Paul get to chatting for a while. They kind of reiterate information that we already know, how Paul and Jennifer broke up and how she's now a super successful Hollywood film producer. And then they kind of have a bit of a dick measuring contest for a while about whose nativity is going to be better. And then Paul just kind of drops that, oh yeah, Jennifer will be coming to mine. And Gordon is shocked and amazed by this. Like, really, why would she be coming? Now at this point, Paul, instead of coming up with a halfway believable lie, like something like, Jennifer's coming home to visit her parents for Christmas and we're going to catch up because we're friends and she'll come and see my school's play. No, Paul instead decides to say Jennifer will be coming and she will be bringing her production studio with her. So the longer this conversation goes on, the bigger and more elaborate the lie gets, because Gordon keeps asking more questions. He says, Hollywood are coming to your school. Yep. To see your show. Yep. To film your show. Yep. To make a film out of it. Yep. Now, of course, Mr. Poppy is there while all this is going on, and he overhears it, and of course he believes it. So as soon as he gets back to the school, he just tells everyone. And there's your plot for the movie, basically. The main character tells a lie, gets out of hand, and has to either go along with it and worry about when they'll have to eventually come clean. It's basically the plot of a sitcom episode, but stretched out to feature length. By the next day, the lie has already spread way beyond control. The kids at the school are being interviewed by the news. It's in the papers. Everyone knows about it, except for Paul, apparently, because he comes in school the next day completely oblivious, and only when he's put up in an assembly in front of the whole school and the press does he realize what's happened. So he has a kind of, awkward realization. There's a moment where it looks like he's gonna come clean, but then no, he decides to go along with the lie anyway, because, well, otherwise this movie would be over after 20 minutes. Paul decides to go ahead with the lie, and he thinks he should try to contact Jennifer, and who knows, maybe he could convince her to bring a film production studio to see their show. And so he goes to see her parents, trying to get her phone number, discovers Mr. Poppy is already there, and has told them that Jennifer's old dog that Paul had has died by being blown up. And so, of course, that's a very tense and hilarious scene, which again serves to re-establish how successful Jennifer is and even has a new boyfriend. And to hammer home this point about the boyfriend, Jennifer's dad says, a new boyfriend. Do you understand that, Paul? He's Scottish as well, by the way, I should point out. Not like the old boyfriend who blows dogs to smithereens. And then that scene is over. And after that, you've got like the most ridiculous, stereotypical flashback you've ever seen. It's, you've got Paul and Jennifer holding hands and spinning around in a circle in the snow. And then you've got them going down a snowy hill on a sled, and they're laughing and having fun. And then like the very next shot is her taking her bags and like leaving. And then we're, back to the present. Paul tries to call her and then just hangs up straight away, and then that's the end of that scene. I'm sure it probably seems like I'm being really erratic and jumping all over the place in how I'm describing these scenes, but I swear to God, that's exactly how things happen in the film. So they start actually working on the play. With all the kids together, Paul starts singing his song, and no one really likes it. And then so Mr. Poppy starts playing piano and sings his own version, whether it's slightly different, has a different tune, and suddenly all the kids love it, and they all start singing it perfectly in their first try, and it's all going great, and everyone loves Mr. Poppy, isn't he great? And then also during this scene, he suggests that they should go visit a hospital to see a baby being born, to improve their performances. Now, Paul, of course, says that they can't do that. I mean, legally, you can't just take kids out of school whenever you feel like. And obviously Paul as the teacher knows this, but then in the very next scene they're at the hospital, so I guess they can. And also they're apparently able to just stand in a doorway and watch while someone is giving birth. And then they go to a farm and see some animals too. According to IMDb, they had about 120 hours of footage for this movie that took about 10 months to edit, and it kind of really feels like it was cut to pieces because it just kind of jumps from one scene to the next without any real connective tissue. Like, scenes don't really follow on from the previous one, they just kind of happen in a sequence. So they start auditioning kids for the leads, Mary and Joseph, and while they're singing some kind of love song about each other, this is apparently so emotionally powerful that it causes Paul to have another flashback. And so it's back to him and Jennifer. They were together. It was Christmas, of course, because every single flashback in this movie happens at Christmas. And Paul is like kind of digging around under the tree looking at presents. Jennifer, she's not looking impressed really. While he's got his back turned looking under the tree, she walks out. He turns back around and then he has a ring in his hand, but she's gone, and you hear the door slam, and it's very sad. And then it fades back to the present, and Paul's got this like 1,000-yard stare going on. It's just brilliant. Paul and Mr. Poppy decide to put together a DVD of some of the songs they've got so far to send to Jennifer because, well, she's not really answering his calls. But, they record that. He gets all emotional again. And on top of this, Mr. Poppy adds another recording where he basically gets all the kids to give her a massive guilt trip. Like, one by one, all the kids walk up to the camera and say something like, "Mr. Maddens is lost without you." That's what children sound like if you've never seen children before. "Please come back and fix his broken heart." So the longer and longer this goes on, the bigger and bigger the lie gets. Like, the whole city knows about it. The mayor has offered them the use of a local cathedral ruins as the venue for their show. There are sponsors involved. Like, at this point, they're basically committing fraud. But, I mean, no one really cared about the kidnapping earlier, so they'll probably be fine. So we get another montage of kids rehearsing the play. Afterwards, Paul goes to read through kids' letters to Santa, which seems a little invasive, but doing that inspires such emotion in him that he becomes really determined and says, "I'm going to go to Hollywood myself and go and find Jennifer and, sort everything out." So, yay. So then when Paul is at the airport about to leave, Mr. Poppy just rocks up with 2 kids, and I was like, "Here, these 2 kids are going with you." And Paul, understandably, is like, "What the fuck are you doing? I can't just take 2 kids to another country with me." And Mr. Poppy's like, "No, don't worry, it's all fine. Look, here's their passports. I've got consent forms. It's fine. They can go with you." So then they go. Oh, as a side note, from what I understand, flights across the Atlantic around Christmas aren't exactly cheap, so I don't know who was dropping an extra £1,000 on each of these kids so they could go. They arrive in Los Angeles, and to be fair, it seems like they did actually really film part of this in Los Angeles, so I guess that's where a large portion of this movie's budget went. But they rock up at the film studio, try to bluff their way past security, which obviously doesn't work, and so just decide to run for it, and exciting chase ensues. And this is intercut with scenes of Mr. Poppy and the other kids back at the school, and they're having, their own funny hijinks and I think stealing animals from a farm. Paul and the kids find their way into the offices of the film studio. They find Jennifer, who is very clearly not happy to see him, and the shocking twist comes when they find out she is in fact not an influential producer or anything like that. She just works there. She basically a secretary. She does filing and phones and gets people coffee and stuff like that. Basically, she doesn't really have any influence in the studio at all, so there is nothing she can do to help them. So Paul, not wanting to accept defeat, just runs straight into the office, And the very next shot is him in some kind of meeting room pitching his idea to someone apparently important. It's not really established. But this guy, who presumably a producer of some kind, is I think the only person in the entire movie who acts like a real person with a brain, because he's just having none of it. And he says, nativities happen every year all over the world, wherever Christians are. What's so special about yours? So Paul, tries to convince him, gets the kids to sing, but, like this guy, he's not impressed, so he just, waves security in, and they get taken out. So after they've gone, Jennifer goes in and tries to convince the guy, but again, he's having none of it. He says, there are 50 states with hundreds of schools who are all putting on nativity shows. I could go see any one of those. Why do I need to travel 6,000 miles? So she, realizes this isn't going to work, so she tries a different tact. She says, okay, do it for me. And she starts, listing off all the things she's done at a time that she's worked for him. She comes in every day and gets his letters, gets his coffee, and answers the phones and starts listing shit. And then he just stops her and goes, that's what you're paid to do. So this is like the end of the second act low point of the movie, and it really hammers it home. Like if this was a romantic comedy, there would be a breakup. But when Paul gets back to the school with the kids, he finds out that the headmistress was not aware that 2 kids were being taken out of the country. And so, obviously, she's pissed. They've probably broken some laws. But Paul's like, oh no, don't worry, it's fine. Look, I've got consent forms. And she's like, oh, well, thank God. She opens them up, takes a look at them, and realizes, oh wait, they're just covered in fucking scribbles because Mr. Poppy has literally forged consent forms. I guess Paul didn't even look at them before leaving, so I can't even count the number of crimes that have been broken by taking 2 children out of the country without the notice of the school or their parents. And if that's the case, who paid for their tickets? How the hell did Mr. Poppy get their passports? The way this is presented is really weird as well, because the headmistress refers to getting angry about the kids being taken out of school, as if this all took place within a single school day, going to LA and back. Or, I don't know, maybe it did take more than one day and the parents are just really, really neglectful and didn't even notice their kids didn't come home. And of course, while this is all coming out, the headmistress also learns that, surprise, the whole Hollywood thing was a lie too. And so, well, she freaks out over that again, and well, things just get worse and worse for old Mr. Paul. After this, Paul takes a little bit of time to completely tear into Mr. Poppy for being a stupid, irresponsible moron who really shouldn't be allowed near children at all, let alone in any kind of position of authority. But after that's all done with, Paul has to go out before his class and tell them, 1, it was a lie, Hollywood's not coming. 2, the play is actually cancelled now anyway, and also he's fired. Now that Paul is at his lowest point, he's got time for another quick Christmassy flashback before he decides to go and see Gordon's nativity play at the other school. Now, in an effort to outdo Paul with this whole Hollywood thing, Gordon has decided to make his play a lot more edgy and dark by making it about Herod and the slaughtering of, all them babies and whatnot. So, it's absolutely brilliant. I probably can't really do it justice just by talking about it, but you've got kids running around screaming, "Where's my baby?" At one point they bring a doll baby on stage and rip it apart, and there's red streamers everywhere. There's flashing red lights and dramatic music and kids screaming. The audience is stunned. It's like that scene in The Producers where they watch Springtime for Hitler. It's that kind of reaction. But then at the end of the play, Herod comes forward and announces, "I am the king," and then it's over and everyone, brilliant, amazing, huge applause. Everyone loves it. The local newspaper reporter guy is there. He writes "extraordinary" in huge letters in his notebook and puts 5-star stickers in there. So, absolutely amazing. Everyone loves it. So later on, Paul goes back to, his regular teaching, but all the kids are sad because they want to do the play and they miss Mr. Poppy, and it's all very sad, and that inspires another flashback montage of all the fun times they had in their rehearsals with Mr. Poppy. Most of it's new footage, not stuff that's actually appeared. Only remember the good stuff. Forget about the several kidnappings and the child endangerment. Remember the good stuff. And so that's apparently enough to inspire Paul to get his shit together and say, "No, we're doing the play anyway. Come on, let's do it. Yeah." Paul goes to see Mr. Poppy to reconcile with him. He goes to his caravan. He opens the door. There's a goat with him. It's not important. They're friends again. They're back together again, the winning team, and they're gonna put the play on, and it's gonna be great. Yay! Let's go. And so suddenly it's the night of the play. They're doing it at the cathedral grounds, as was planned. There's lots of parents and other crowd coming in to see it. No one seems to notice or comment on the distinct lack of any kind of film crew or presence from Hollywood studio. But not important. They start the show. It's all going great. Everyone's loving it. They do a couple songs. All goes off without a hitch. Great. But then Gordon shows up and decides to wreck shit. So, he runs up on stage, steals a mic, and basically blows everything, saying, you people, you thought you were here to see Hollywood. They're not coming. Hollywood's not coming. That's all you came here for, not to see this substandard chav fest. For anyone who doesn't know, chav is somewhat of a derogatory term for like a working class kind of person. So yeah, this movie really shits on these kids a lot. So he's going on about how this is all a big lie and it's a sham and Paul's a liar, but then while he's talking, he kind of trails off and kind of looks up into the sky, and then you see a couple different shots of other characters looking up into the sky, and then you see the angle, and it's it's a light in the sky. Is this some kind of Christmas miracle? Perhaps it is, but it's not what you're thinking. It's not a star or anything. It is in fact a helicopter with a searchlight that looks like it's been borrowed from a PS2 game. And of course, that can mean only one thing. Hollywood have arrived. Yay, big triumphant moment. Hollywood have arrived. Everyone's happy, everyone cheers, they carry on with the show and do a few more songs. Paul makes his way to the back of the crowd to find Jennifer coming in with her producer boss guy, but he doesn't really do or say anything. He's just kind of there, and you see him in a few shots. Paul and Jennifer reunite. The music gets a bit quiet, and it's like a very emotional reunion. Paul says, "You weren't coming," and then Jennifer says, she's Scottish, by the way. I think I've mentioned that earlier. But she says, "No." And then they hug, and then they break the hug and look at each other for a while, and then they kind of press their faces together in a way that I'm told is a symbol of love and affection among humans. But there it is. They love each other. They're back together again. And all of the plot threads of the movie have been neatly tied up. But if you're wondering how she convinced her boss to come and see this play and bring that helicopter, I don't know. But don't worry about that, it's not important. It's only the main plot of the movie that's resolved off screen and never explained. Don't worry about it. The important thing is, they finish the play, the baby Jesus is born, everyone loves it, lots of applause, tears, it's all going great. And so they have one last big song, like a curtain call. Everyone comes out, all the kids have their own little moment of doing a dance or whatever. And then all the main characters come up on stage and they each do a dance. And even Gordon comes up, and they're all friends again now because Christmas and whatever. And yay, it's all very happy and everything is great in the end. And so in one last scene, we see Paul and Jennifer standing together outside a house covered in Christmas decorations. It's snowing, all very happy, and there's one last little bit of narration that's something along the lines of, and so from that night, me and Jennifer fell in love with each other and Christmas all over again. And as for our nativities, they just kept getting better. Fade to black, roll credits. But what about the Hollywood? Yeah, like I said at the beginning, I don't understand why this movie has become like a modern Christmas classic. At least in this country it has. It's on TV over Christmas every year. It has like 3 sequels of decreasing quality. The most recent one came out this year. And if you're hoping to see more of Martin Freeman, then I guess you're out of luck because he did not return for another one. In fact, none of the sequels have the same lead actor. But I don't know, I've never seen them. Maybe I'll get around to that sometime next year. But anyway, Merry Christmas.